Georgie, and I am the On Point Stitcher. Happy Flossmas! This is my first one, and I'm so excited to be here. I will be doing a 12 days of Flossmas, and during that 12 days of Flossmas, I'll be working on the Brooks Books Advent Animals, and that is still on her site. They are still free. I will link that below so that you can stitch these along with me if you'd like, or just download to stitch at another time. But I thought it would be fun to try to get at least 12 of these animals done. So I am doing mine on one big piece. I'm working on a piece of 18 count Aida that I hand dyed last year. I used navy Rit dye and just followed a quick tutorial and rinsed it out, let that dry, and then last year I did do the frame and the numbers and the snow so that I would be able to just plug in the animals. But what I thought would be fun is that while I'm stitching, I thought I would tell you a story that reminds me of the type of animal that I'm stitching. So I thought I'd tell you a little story about my first cat that I had. Growing up, we always had cats, and we always had at least one family cat, but I did have a cat that was specifically just my cat. So I grew up in Virginia, close to the Chesapeake Bay, and in that area we would often get hurricanes and storms, and one year we got a hurricane that flooded us. And luckily it wasn't so high that it didn't make it into the house, but the floodwaters were a good foot, and so after the storm had gone away, of course, all of us kids thought that it would be a blast to go and play out in the rainwater. So we would put on our high boots and go outside and play. And I was the first one outside, ready to go and play. And I'm out, kicking the water, just having a good old time. And I start hearing a cry. And I start looking around like, I know I am hearing a kitten cry. That's not a cat, it sounds like a kitten. So I start getting closer and closer. It's almost like we're playing Marco Polo. I would call out and I would hear a return little meowing, and it was coming from the inside of our shed. Now, we had a very, very old house and a very old shed, and it was one of those buildings that you just didn't want to go into because it was cold and dark and scary. There were no lights in there, but that's where we would keep our bicycles and things. So I couldn't figure out why I was hearing this kitten cry from our closed shed. So I go inside and get the key and push that door open, and I look inside, and the rainwaters are up to almost my knees, and there, sitting on a tricycle seat, is this little tiny black soaking wet kitten, just meowing at me, just scared and cold and shivering and so skinny. And I couldn't help myself. I went right over, picked him up, and took him to the porch. Now, our porch was up off the ground, and so I was able to get a good look at him, and I looked him over, looked to see if he had any health issues going on. I didn't see anything right away, aside from the fact that he looked like he probably had some fleas. So, of course, what does a kid do but go to mom and say, "Mom, can I keep it? I found it." And keep in mind, I'm very young, probably about 8 years old. And, she didn't say no. She said, all right. So we gave him a flea bath and we cleaned him up, and we took him to the vet, got him all cleaned up and got him all of his things that he needed. And he was my best friend. He spent every waking minute with me, we were always together when he was in the house. And when he was outside, all I had to do was call for him. His name was Georgie. I don't remember why I named him that. I just know that I did. I think it was because that name reminded me of like a funny Bugs Bunny cartoon or something. And so I thought it would be fun to have a cat named Georgie. And so that was his name. Now, because he had already grown up outside a little bit, he didn't always want to be inside. And so he would be outside sometimes. And like I said, I could just call him. And if I didn't see him, I could call really loudly for him. And I would hear his little jingling collar running home to come and see me. And when he would come inside, he was always with me. He didn't want to hang out with anybody else. He was friendly to everybody else in the family, but he just loved to be with me. And at nighttime, that silly boy, I don't know what it was or why he would do this, but he would curl up on top of my head and purr in my ear. And you know that little cute thing that kittens do to their mothers when they're nursing, where they push at her belly? He would do that in my hair and just purr at me. So he was just so content to be near me, and I really enjoyed having him. He was just a sweet cat, and I still miss him. I remember how sad I was when we had to let him go, but he was an old man and he was just the sweetest thing forever. I would love to hear any type of story that you might want to tell me about a cat that you might have, or your first cat, or if you don't have cats, maybe tell me a different story about maybe a cat that you've seen at the zoo, or your favorite cat, or a favorite exotic cat. I would love to hear about any of your cat stories that you might have. The next story I thought I'd share with you that is somewhat cat related was when I was in Alice in Wonderland. I was the cook, and if you're not familiar with the actual story of Alice in Wonderland, I was in the scene called Pig and Pepper, and I was the cook. And we thought it would be hilarious to make me have a bottom. So I had to wear a synthetic bottom, and when I put on the first one, it didn't look much different because the dress that I was wearing was a very full skirted dress. And so the director said, well, I have two different options. So I said, okay, well, let's try the other option because it was a little larger. And that one still wasn't large enough. So I had to actually wear both devices. One went down the entire half portion of my leg, and then the other I had to safety pin on top. And I will be sure to put photos so that you can see what I'm talking about. But as the cook, I had a very large bottom. And my very good friend Mariah was playing the Cheshire Cat at the time. And her Cheshire Cat, I guess you would say, personality that she decided to go with was very, very cat-like. That very, I don't care, I'm going to sleep wherever I want, I'm going to do whatever I want because I'm a cat and that is how we do things. And so Mariah, when she had nowhere to lay as her cat self, if there were, everyone was laying on the bench, or there was nowhere soft and warm for her to sleep, then she would come over to me and she would rest on my behind. And I have a photo of her doing that. And it was just so much fun to be able to be on stage with her. And we had such a good time. and she was so good at playing cat. She had that perfect, like, even just the way that she would hold her hands and use her body was very, very, very cat-like. But we had a blast. And at one point, I didn't mean to do it, but at one point I turned super hard and just smacked my bottom into her on stage. And it was during rehearsal. And she said, "We have to add that in, but I will be sure to put that photo in so you all can see how much fun we had doing that." It was such a fun production. I will also have to include a picture of a group photo that we were trying to take backstage with our little group, and it is just so goofy. So, like I said, I had to wear a fake bottom to make me look silly, and I was trying to figure out where to stand, where would be the best spot for me. And Mariah had crouched down in front of us so that we could all fit into the picture. And I'm looking at her like, I don't know what to do here. And if you didn't know what was happening, when you see the picture, you're like, wait, what exactly is going on? Why is she looking at her like that? It's just I just love that picture. It's so funny. I'll make sure that I share that. And that production was just so much fun anyway, because both of my kids were in it, and it was so much fun to laugh and make plans and do things together. And it's so much fun just to play a comical character when you're doing a ballet anyway, because 9 times out of 10, the person or the character or the thing that you are playing in a ballet is supposed to be serious. And if not serious, at least not comical. And so I got a lot of chances to be comical on stage. It was my favorite thing to do. But it was a lot of fun to be that cook on stage and bring laughter and joy to the audience. Thank you so much for letting me tell those stories and for sharing with you. I truly enjoyed telling them, and I really enjoyed reminiscing on some memories that I haven't thought about in a while. It gave me so much joy to think back and smile and remember some things. It was so much fun. I truly enjoy listening today. But let's talk about Miss Katie Kitty. She is our star of the show today, and I don't want to leave her out. Now, I am using most of the called for colors, but I did have to substitute out 2 colors because I didn't have them on hand. I had to substitute out 913 and I used 562 instead. It's just what I had on hand, and I thought it looked really nice with the 700. And there's another color that I did have to substitute. I don't remember what color it was, but it's right underneath the cheeks on her face. I didn't have that color, so I just used the same color that goes around the eyes and the tip of the tail. Now I am stitching this entire piece using the sewing method in hand. I'm stitching on 18 count Aida, and so I feel pretty confident when I'm stitching the sewing method on this type of fabric. It's just got such good coverage, and so the floss will typically lay really nicely using 2 strands on it. And I like to also do the sewing method when I am doing any type of back stitching, because I feel like I personally am able to help the floss lay a little better than if I am going from front to back every single stitch, but that's just a personal preference. And in the middle of my snowflakes, I noticed that because I was going into the center of the snowflake each time instead of just going all the way across, that I was getting a pull in the fabric and it was showing a hole in it just because it was being, pulled in so many different directions. So I went back and I actually did add a French knot to the middle of every single snowflake, and I'm super happy with the way that turned out. And The pattern is very easy to follow. It does tell you how many strands to use and what color. So the back stitching is actually very easy, and it's very minimal too. There's just a few places that you do have to backstitch. Well, I think that wraps things up for today's Flossmas episode. I'm looking forward to the next video. I don't think I'll be able to get them out simultaneously within days because I haven't even started stitching the next one, but I am hoping to get out 12 videos through the holiday season. And I thought it was really fun to see the project come together. The next animal is going to be Peter Polar Bear. He's going to take up space number 2, and I already got all of his colors together. I'm looking forward to starting him later today. He's got such a cute mug of hot cocoa, and he is just so cute. I'm looking forward to working on that next. So for now, I wish you well. I hope you are having a wonderful start to your Christmas season, and I will see you next time. Happy Flossmas!